Pallas Athena, the second asteroid ever discovered, represents the archetype of the warrior queen, the strategist, the intellectual problem solver, and the architect of creative wisdom. Named after the Greek goddess of wisdom and just warfare, Pallas in the natal chart shows where and how we apply logic, pattern recognition, systemic thinking, and defensive strategies. When placed in the 11th house, the domain of communities, friendships, social networks, alliances, and long-term visions for the future, Pallas functions as a master social architect. This placement blends the detached, objective intellect of Pallas with the collective, forward-thinking, and egalitarian essence of the 11th house. The result is an individual who views the social fabric not just as a place for casual connection, but as a dynamic grid to be understood, organized, and optimized for a greater cause. The social architect and the pattern of groups. With Pallas in the 11th house, you possess an innate ability to perceive the underlying structures of groups, organizations, and social networks. Where others see a chaotic room full of people or a simple list of club members, you see a living matrix of human connection. You instinctively map out who holds influence, how information flows through a network, and where the structural weaknesses lie within an organization. This makes you exceptionally skilled at community organizing, committee work, and coalition building. You do not just join groups, you understand how to align them to function like a finely tuned machine. You are the person who can bring together disparate factions, people who seemingly have nothing in common, by identifying a hidden, shared objective that unites them. Your approach to friendships and alliances is highly intellectual and strategic. You value intellectual camaraderie and are drawn to networks of innovators, free thinkers, scientists, activists, or anyone who challenges the status quo with systemic solutions. The strategic visionary and collective ideals. The 11th house governs our hopes, wishes, and highest aspirations for humanity. When Pallas resides here, your vision for the future is not vague or merely idealistic, it is concrete, strategic, and highly organized. You are deeply concerned with societal progress, justice, and reform, but you approach these causes with the cool head of a political strategist rather than purely emotional fervor. You excel at looking at large-scale societal problems, such as institutional inequality, environmental challenges, or educational systemic failures, and breaking them down into actionable blueprints for change. You are the strategist behind the movement, the person writing the bylaws of the non-profit, or the planner designing the digital infrastructure for a global network. Your activism is rooted in logic and pattern recognition. You can see 10 steps ahead, predicting how a current societal trend will manifest a decade from now, allowing you to champion progressive ideas long before they enter the mainstream consensus. The warrior for the collective and just warfare. Pallas Athena never fights without a righteous cause, and in the 11th house, that cause is almost always the defense of the collective, the marginalized, or the shared ideals of a community. You are a fierce defender of humanitarian principles and intellectual freedom. If a group you belong to faces injustice, or if a systemic flaw threatens to dismantle a community asset, your Pallas warrior energy activates. However, your warfare is entirely intellectual and political. You defeat adversaries through superior planning, brilliant rhetoric, policy manipulation, or by mobilizing a network so effectively that the opposition is simply outmaneuvered. You understand that true power lies in numbers and collective action, so you weaponize solidarity. You are highly effective at utilizing public relations, grassroots campaigns, and digital networking to defend the vulnerable and advocate for systemic equity. Shadow expressions and the intellectualization of connection. While Pallas in the 11th house grants immense brilliance in handling macro-level human dynamics, it introduces specific challenges on a micro level. Because you view social circles through a lens of strategy and pattern, you run the risk of over-intellectualizing your personal friendships. You might treat relationships like chess pieces or intellectual experiments, accidentally stripping them of emotional warmth, vulnerability, and spontaneity. There can be a tendency to become a fair-weather strategist who is highly engaged when a group has a problem to solve or a goal to achieve, but emotionally detached when it comes to simple, everyday human bonding. If you find yourself evaluating friends based on their utility to your broader goals or their intellectual alignment with your worldview, you may experience profound underlying loneliness. Furthermore, if your strategic vision for a group is rejected by the collective, you can experience a deep sense of alienation, retreating into the archetype of the misunderstood, solitary genius who looks down on the very society they wish to save. Harmonizing wisdom and fellowship. To fully integrate Pallas in the 11th house, you must learn to balance your profound gift for social engineering with genuine, heart-centered connection. Your intellectual blueprints for the future are vital, but they require the fuel of human empathy to truly come alive. When you learn to use your strategic mind to uplift others without needing to control the outcome of the group dynamic, you become an unstoppable force for progressive change. By allowing your friendships to sometimes be beautifully messy, emotional, and illogical, you bridge the gap between the detached brilliance of Pallas and the profound, unifying love of the human collective. You are ultimately here to teach the world that a better future is not just a utopian dream, but a destination that can be consciously, logically, and collectively engineered. When Pallas Athena filters through the 12 zodiac signs in the 11th house, it changes the flavor of your social strategy. This is how your inner warrior strategist operates within groups and envisions the future across every sign. Pallas in Aries, the trailblazer. You take swift, decisive action in groups and love leading communities toward a brand new cause. Your social strategy is bold and competitive, but you can be impatient with collective bureaucracy. Pallas in Taurus, the stabilizer. You build long-lasting, rock-solid community foundations. Your strategy focuses on securing tangible resources, funding, and sustainable, practical plans for your network's future. Pallas in Gemini, the networker. A master of data and communication, you connect different social circles through the sharing of ideas. Your strategy is hypersocial, utilizing digital media, dialogue, and brainstorming sessions to solve collective problems. Pallas in Cancer, the guardian. You treat your alliances and friend groups like a surrogate family. Your strategy is fiercely protective. You use your intellect to create safe, emotionally supportive spaces and defend vulnerable communities. Pallas in Leo, the catalyst. You bring creative drama, showmanship, and undeniable magnetism to your social networks. You strategize by inspiring others, using your personal expression and pride to rally people behind a central vision. Pallas in Virgo, the fixer. You are the ultimate analytical planner of the house. You see the tiny flaws in group systems and fix them with meticulous editing, volunteer work, and hyper-organized logistics. Pallas in Libra, the diplomat. You bring harmony, artistic vision, and a deep sense of justice to your networks. Your strategy relies heavily on mediation, fair negotiation, and creating balanced, beautiful group dynamics. Pallas in Scorpio, the alchemist. You see through social facades and map out hidden power dynamics within groups. Your strategy involves deep psychological insight, crisis management, and transforming organizations from the inside out. Pallas in Sagittarius, the philosopher. You look at the massive, global picture. Your strategy is ethical, philosophical, and educational, seeking to unite communities under shared truth, higher learning, and broad, hopeful horizons. Pallas in Capricorn, the architect. You treat social networks and humanitarian goals like a long-term business model. Your strategy is disciplined, traditional, and patient, building enduring institutions with clear hierarchies and real-world authority. Pallas in Aquarius, the revolutionary. At home in the 11th house, your strategy is fiercely independent, avant-garde, and systemic. You use cutting-edge technology or radical ideology to entirely disrupt and rebuild societal structures. Pallas in Pisces, the dreamer. You perceive the unseen, intuitive, and spiritual currents running through humanity. Your strategy relies on deep empathy, artistic visualization, and spiritual unity to heal collective wounds. When Pallas Athena transits your natal 11th house, the cosmic goddess of wisdom, strategy, and pattern recognition marches into the sector of your chart that governs your social networks, friendships, communities, alliances, and your grandest visions for the future. Transits of Pallas are not emotionally charged like those of the Moon, nor are they explosive like Mars. Instead, they operate as periods of mental crystallization. This transit brings a cool, objective, and highly analytical light to the way you interact with groups and how you plan your long-term goals. Mapping the network, social audits and structural clarity. The immediate effect of Pallas moving through the 11th house is a sudden, sharp clarity regarding your friendships and group involvements. If you have felt drained by casual acquaintances, or if organizations you belong to have felt chaotic, Pallas provides the intellectual detachment needed to assess these situations objectively. You begin to see the underlying patterns of your social life. You notice who truly supports your growth, how energy flows within your friend circles, and where political posturing or toxic dynamics are sabotaging a group's potential. This is an exceptional period for performing a social audit. You find yourself less interested in superficial socialization and far more invested in intellectual camaraderie. You will naturally seek out networks of free thinkers, innovators, activists, or professionals who stimulate your mind and challenge your worldview. If you are part of a committee, a nonprofit, or a professional association, this transit empowers you to see exactly how to streamline operations, resolve long-standing interpersonal conflicts, and align the group's infrastructure with its original mission. From daydreams to blueprints, strategizing the future. The 11th house is traditionally the house of hopes, wishes, and aspirations. When Pallas transits here, your approach to your personal future shifts from passive dreaming to active engineering. If you have had vague ideas about where you want your life to be in 5 or 10 years, Pallas demands that you write down the steps, calculate the risks, and build a concrete timeline. Your pattern recognition skills are peaking in relation to macro-level trends. You can look at the current state of your industry, technology, or society and accurately predict where things are heading. This predictive insight allows you to position yourself strategically. It is an ideal time to launch digital campaigns, build websites, organize grassroots movements, or pitch large-scale projects to investors or crowdsourcing platforms. You have a unique ability right now to communicate complex, progressive ideas in a way that makes logical sense to the masses, making it easier to gain the backing you need to manifest your visions. The activist awakening, fighting for the collective cause. Because Pallas is the archetype of the just warrior, her passage through the 11th house frequently sparks an intellectual awakening regarding social justice, humanitarianism, and collective equity. You may find yourself deeply bothered by systemic flaws, institutional corruption, or societal inequalities. Instead of retreating in frustration, the Pallas transit compels you to fight back, not with anger, but with superior planning, logic, and systemic reform. During this time, you may step into a leadership or advisory role within a cause you care about. You become the strategist behind the scenes. You might find yourself organizing community defenses, writing policy proposals, restructuring the bylaws of an organization, or managing public relations for a movement. You instinctively understand that true power lies in solidarity, and you become highly adept at mobilizing people, organizing resources, and outmaneuvering institutional obstacles through brilliant coordination. Navigating the shadow, the danger of hyper-rational alliances. Every transit carries a shadow manifestation, and for Pallas in the 11th house, the primary risk is the over-intellectualization of your human connections. Because your mind is so focused on strategy, utility, and pattern, you may accidentally begin treating your friends like chess pieces or intellectual sounding boards rather than living, feeling human beings. If you become too detached, you risk alienating the very people who love you. You might find yourself judging friends harshly if they do not match your intellectual speed or share your specific political and philosophical visions for the future. There can also be a tendency to look at groups with an attitude of intellectual superiority, stepping into the role of the cold analyst who treats community dynamics like a laboratory experiment. If a group rejects your advice or your perfectly crafted blueprints during this transit, the shadow of Pallas can cause you to retreat into a bitter, solitary exile, convinced that society is simply too foolish to be saved. Integrating the transiting wisdom. To make the absolute most of this transit, you must allow Pallas to sharpen your mind without hardening your heart. Use this period to bring order to your grandest ambitions. Design the business plans, organize the community fundraisers, clean up the messy dynamics in your social clubs, and seek out the brilliant minds that elevate your thinking. By anchoring your sharp, analytical insights in genuine empathy for the human collective, this transit can mark a profound turning point. You have the rare opportunity to transition from a solitary thinker into a true social architect, weaving together networks of people and ideas that will pave a rational, progressive path toward the future you desire. Subscribe, like, and share.